The night was cruel. The cold air stung like needles against the skin, and the city seemed to swallow those who had no place in it. Beneath the flickering streetlights, people hurried past, bundled in coats and scarves, their laughter echoing through the streets. None of them noticed the boy sitting alone on the steps of an abandoned store. His clothes were thin, his shoes torn, and his face was hidden beneath the shadow of a hood. His name was Ethan, and he was only 15. 15, and yet he had lived through more pain than most people did in a lifetime. His parents had died in a tragic accident when he was a child, leaving him to the mercy of the foster system. Home after home, rejection after rejection, he finally gave up and walked away from it all. The streets, though harsh and unforgiving, at least didn't pretend to love him. That evening, his stomach growled louder than ever before. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He searched the alleys behind restaurants, hoping for scraps, and that's when he saw it, something lying on the wet pavement under the dim light of a lamp. A wallet. Ethan's heart pounded as he picked it up. It was heavy. Inside were crisp bills, hundreds of dollars, maybe more. His hands trembled as he held the money. This could change everything. This could buy food for weeks, maybe even a warm bed for a while. His lips quivered as hunger clawed at his insides. But then, he saw the photo. A black and white picture tucked inside, showing a young man with his wife and 2 children, smiling in front of a small house. The picture was old, well-worn, clearly cherished. And next to it, a driver's license, George Whitman. Ethan closed the wallet slowly, his throat tightening. He had nothing, absolutely nothing. Yet, somehow, he couldn't bring himself to keep what wasn't his. If I take this, he whispered to himself, I'll lose the only thing I still have left, my honesty. And so, despite the gnawing hunger in his belly, Ethan made his choice. The next morning, he asked around, showing the ID. An older shopkeeper squinted at the picture and nodded. George Whitman? I've seen him. He walks through the park every evening, right around sunset. Kind man, though a little quiet these days. So, Ethan waited. Hours passed. His stomach ached, his body shivered from the cold, but he clutched that wallet like it was a mission from heaven. Finally, just as the orange glow of the sun sank behind the buildings, he saw him. An older man, walking slowly with a cane, his shoulders slightly bent but his face carrying a quiet dignity. Ethan's heart thumped in his chest as he stood, walked toward him, and spoke softly. Sir, excuse me. Did you lose this? George's eyes widened in shock. He reached out with trembling hands, taking the wallet, flipping it open. Relief flooded his face. My God, he whispered. I thought it was gone forever. I found it near the diner, Ethan said quickly. I didn't take anything. I just thought you'd want it back. George looked at him carefully then. Really looked. The boy's clothes were ragged, his cheeks hollow, his eyes tired but honest. Here stood a child who clearly hadn't been cared for in a long time, yet had chosen integrity over survival. What's your name, son? George asked gently. Ethan, the boy replied, nervous. Well, Ethan, George said slowly, you've done something most grown men wouldn't do. Thank you. He hesitated, then added, at least let me buy you dinner. Ethan resisted at first. He didn't want to look like a beggar. But the warmth in George's eyes convinced him. Soon, they were sitting inside a cozy diner. The waitress brought steaming plates of food, and Ethan couldn't stop himself. He devoured the meal with the desperation of someone who had forgotten what it meant to be full. George watched silently, his heart heavy. He saw the way Ethan tried to eat politely despite his hunger, the way he wiped his mouth with the back of his sleeve, embarrassed. "Ethan," George finally said, "where are your parents?" The boy froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. He lowered it slowly, his eyes fixed on the plate. "They're gone. Been gone a long time." "And where do you live?" Ethan let out a small, bitter laugh. "Wherever I can. Sometimes the park. Sometimes behind the old store." George swallowed hard, feeling a pang in his chest. Here was a boy with nothing, yet he had returned a wallet full of money without hesitation. "Ethan," George said softly, "I don't usually tell people this, but I want you to know. My name isn't just George Whitman. I'm the founder of Whitman Enterprises." The boy frowned in confusion. George smiled faintly. "I'm a billionaire, Ethan. I have more money than I could ever spend. But lately, I've been wondering what any of it is worth. You see, I lost my wife years ago. My children are grown, living their own lives. And the older I get, the more I realize money can't buy the things that matter, like honesty. Like kindness. You reminded me of that tonight." Ethan's mouth opened, but no words came out. He couldn't believe the man sitting across from him wasn't just some old man, but one of the wealthiest men in the country. George leaned forward. "Ethan, I don't just want to thank you. I want to help you. Let me give you a home. Let me help you go back to school. You don't belong on the streets." The boy's eyes stung with tears. For so long, no one had wanted him. No one had seen him. And now, this man was offering him not just food, not just shelter, but something far greater, a future. From that day forward, Ethan's life transformed. George kept his promise. He brought Ethan into his home, gave him new clothes, enrolled him in school, and treated him like the son he never had. At first, Ethan struggled. He wasn't used to kindness. He expected it to be taken away at any moment. But George never wavered. He guided him patiently, teaching him about life, about business, about values. He became more than a benefactor, he became a father. Years passed. Ethan studied harder than anyone else, determined to prove himself worthy of the chance he'd been given. He excelled in school, then in university, graduating with honors. And all the while, George watched proudly from the sidelines, his heart swelling with joy. One day, after a graduation ceremony, George placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You returned my wallet when you had nothing, Ethan. But what you really returned, was my faith in people. Never forget that." Ethan nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "And you gave me more than I ever dreamed of, George. You gave me a family." When George eventually passed away years later, he left behind not just his fortune, but his legacy. In his will, he named Ethan as his heir, not because of blood, but because of love. Ethan, now a man, didn't forget where he had come from. He used his inheritance to build homes for children without families, to open schools for the homeless, to make sure no child ever had to sleep on the cold streets again. And whenever he told his story, he always ended the same way. "All of this, everything I am, it started with one choice. The choice to return a wallet, even when I had nothing. Never underestimate the power of doing what's right. Because sometimes, the smallest choices, unlock the biggest destinies. This story reminds us that honesty, even when difficult, can change our lives in ways we never expect. And kindness, when shared, can ripple out to touch countless others.